I'm Alex Gath, and I'm basically from Oxford, but I have lived in London and Edinburgh for long periods as well. Yes. Well, I think the first thing to say is that almost everywhere in the world, people either do pilgrimage or they do something that is fairly like pilgrimage. So they might go to the graves of heroic figures in their culture. They might go to places that have a certain kind of magnetic attraction. They might go to places where very remarkable things have happened, and those journeys to those places are very important to them. So it's something that people undertake almost all over the world. And in the last 35 years, whilst I've been preoccupied with this question, there's been exponential growth. This is partly for technological reasons, wider ranges of transport available, better connections. It's partly for economic reasons, but it's also for what you might call psychocultural reasons. There are many, many more people that want to be doing journeys that have a point and that somehow address things that matter to them. So that's all a very intriguing start, I feel. For various personal reasons, due to the people that influenced me, from early on, I wanted to specialize in South India and also in Western Europe. And so those have been my two main areas of activity, but I try and keep abreast of what's happening elsewhere as well. I started off being preoccupied mostly with issues in psychology that were quite practical, so issues in clinical psychology. And I came to the view that many of them were ones that required a cross-cultural approach. At the same time, there were particular themes that preoccupied me about culture that I wanted to address as well. So in my career, I've really tried to keep two strands going. One is being concerned with psychology, practical issues to do with addressing clinical and practical problems, and the other is looking at religious culture, social scientifically. And some of the time I do them together, and sometimes I do them completely separately. And here at St Antony's, I want to try to bring together my research on religious culture, particularly having to do with pilgrimage activity that I've done on and off for about 35 years now, often not making enough time to write it up. So now's the time to really process it, get some writing done, and hopefully get some feedback in this community regarding my ideas. The part of India that I've looked at, which is South India and especially Southwest India, is extraordinarily diverse. The principal religious communities are Hindu, Christian, and Muslim, all very ancient and very long established in that part of the world. But there's also important Jewish communities, Buddhist communities, and almost everything you can think of. And they're also extremely internally variable as well. So that is like having something of a window onto practically every religious tradition that you can think of. And in addition to that, there's the fact that it's both enormously significant and enormously enriching for the people that do it, but it has to be faced that it's also a very important topic because things go wrong. You get accidents, you get disease, and you can get violence. And that is intriguing and important because, again, it's a situation where you're sort of facing the whole of life. A lot of the time, it goes very well and people find it a hugely powerful and beneficial experience. But it has to be faced that there are these vitally important practical matters that need to be thought about as well, and the possibility of things not going as well as they should. I would say that there are two aspects to that. The first is that it so clearly matters so much to the people that do it. And I think I relate to that because it's part of life. People bring their issues and concerns into the important pilgrimage-like journeys that they do. And I suspect that I would probably be fairly interested in it even if I hadn't developed an academic preoccupation with it. But there's also the fact that if you take into account the possibility of looking at secular pilgrimage as an extension to the field, and I would certainly recommend doing that at least some of the time, although my own focus is a bit more on religious pilgrimage. If you do look at it in that way, then really I hardly know anybody who doesn't have a view on it. They have some kind of experience, they have some kind of a view on it. And the question of the exponential rise in recent years is also saying something about developments in the cultural and personal pursuits of people who regard themselves as emphatically non-religious. And all of that's worth exploring as well. So I've talked a little bit about the practical problems that arise. I hope that it will be possible to encourage discussions and research on this topic that are really balanced and fair. That's difficult to do. It's often actually, I would say, the leading challenge in social science. It's not that you're coming up against things that are completely incomprehensible. It's that you've got to give relative weight to what matters in a kind of fair and proportionate way. So that's an initially important thing. Secondly, there's got to be the addressing of ecological challenges, because millions of people are undertaking these journeys all over the world and going sometimes in gatherings of millions of people. So that's quite normal in Asia, and certainly thousands and thousands of people in Europe and other places. And that has a big impact on those places. So there's a real question about how should it be handled and approached in a way that is ecologically sensitive. And then finally, if I were to suggest something that's a kind of really big picture sort of philosophical point, I would like to think it would be part of a discussion of encouraging people to lead really kind of multi-dimensional lives. I do sometimes worry that that's a bit something that we are losing nowadays. Everybody's so busy all the time and rushing around so madly that they become just their job and a bit of time for their family, and that's all it is. And so often you hear from people that pilgrimage becomes a part of their life because it's about having a more multi-dimensional life, having time for the things that can get left out too much in the rush and the hurly-burly. So I hope it's sort of contributing to that way of seeing things. Well, I think that there's two aspects to that. One is that I've always been very preoccupied with regions and trying to get a good sense of a whole region with regard to this topic, but as far as possible with regard to the religious culture generally of that region, and then going on to inter-regional comparisons as well. This has been a little bit patchy and sporadic in the field, probably partly because people have stumbled into an interest in pilgrimage when they started off being interested in something else. And that has meant that quite a bit of the literature has been a little bit hit and miss as regards really building up the possibility for a very careful and rich comparison, which I think is an important thing to do. Another aspect of it is that with a 35 experience of working in it, there's a longitudinal aspect. And so both you can see the changes within different cultures, you can see the impact of changing technology, and you can see the impact on people through the length of their lives, people that I've known going from being young people to later middle-aged people, if they're my age, or whatever section of the life journey it is. So that longitudinal aspect is something which I think is valuable as well. My thought on this is that St Antony's is completely self-selecting. It is full of people doing extraordinarily interesting work, very often fieldwork based, across social scientific disciplines from all over the world. So I feel that St Antony's is self-selecting. Yes, I'm very tempted to say that I would like to arrange some pilgrimages that are in honor of Antony of Padua and Antony of Egypt. Why not? I think that would be extremely appropriate. On the more academic front, I would like, if possible, for my pilgrimage studies to overlap as much as possible with the fields of diaspora studies and migration studies. That's something that I've thought about a lot. There are certain issues in common, although certain differences as well. There's no question that pilgrimage traditions are hugely valuable for helping diaspora communities stay in touch with their heritage, retain a sense of identity, a sense of orientation to a homeland and to their cultural background. And I think that diaspora and migration related issues are extremely fascinating and important anyway. So I would like that area to be increasingly developed in my activities.